Tenny presents Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift.
I awoke on a desolate shore, the last survivor of a violent shipwreck. My head ached, my body was bruised, but I was alive. I attempted to rise, but found myself unable to stir. My arms and legs, stretched out and fastened to the ground on each side, were secured by countless slender threads. My hair, which was long and thick, was tied down in the same manner. I could only look upwards, into the blinding sun. Soon, I felt something alive moving on my left leg, which, advancing gently forward over my breast, came almost up to my chin. Bending my eyes downward as much as I could, I perceived it to be a human creature, not 6 inches high, with a bow and arrow in his hands, and a quiver at his back.
Now, the story itself.
I was in the land of Lilliput. These tiny people, at first fearful of the man-mountain, soon grew accustomed to my presence. They constructed a massive engine to carry me to their capital and housed me in their largest ancient temple. I was a wonder, a giant in a land of miniature things. The emperor himself came to see me, a man whose grandiosity far exceeded his stature.
Man Mountain, you stand in the presence of the most potent emperor of Lilliput, the light and terror of the universe, whose dominions extend to the extremities of the globe, monarch of all monarchs, taller than the sons of men.
I had to suppress a smile. This great monarch was barely the length of my hand. To gain my freedom, I had to agree to a list of conditions. One of them was that I would not leave the kingdom without permission. Soon after, I was visited by a principal secretary, Reldresal.
Greetings, mighty Man Mountain. I have come to inform you of the state of our affairs.
He told me of the 2 great struggles that divided the nation.
Our empire is torn by 2 factions, the Tramexan and the Slamexan. The distinction is the height of their heels, the high heels and the low heels. His Majesty has determined to only use low heels in his government.
I could scarcely believe my ears.
But there is a greater danger. We are threatened by an invasion from the island of Blefuscu, our sworn enemy.
And the source of their ancient war?
It began over which end of an egg one ought to break. The primitive way was at the larger end, but His Majesty's grandfather, as a boy, cut his finger breaking an egg that way. So the emperor of the time published an edict commanding all subjects to break the smaller end of their eggs. The people rebelled. 6 rebellions. The monarchs of Blefuscu fanned these flames, and now they accuse us of schism, for breaking from the holy doctrine of our great prophet, that all true believers shall break their eggs at the convenient end.
The convenient end? This was the cause of a bloody, centuries-long war. Seeing an opportunity to prove my worth, I offered my services to the emperor. I waded across the channel, separating the 2 islands. It was no deeper than my midriff. The enemy, upon seeing me, were so frightened they leapt out of their ships and swam to shore. I took my cables, fastened a hook to the prow of each of the 50 largest vessels, and tied the ends of the cords together. Then I simply walked back, pulling the entire fleet of Blefuscu behind me. The emperor's joy was immense. He met me at the shore and declared me a Nardak, the highest title of honor in his realm.
My valiant Nardak, you have destroyed the naval power of our enemy. Now you must go back. You will bring the rest of their ships, and I shall become the sole monarch of the world.
I was shocked by his ambition. I refused, telling him I would not be an instrument to bring a free and brave people into slavery. This was the first time I fell out of favor with the emperor. My refusal was resented, and the court began to conspire against me. I learned they had drawn up articles of impeachment, accusing me of treason. The proposed punishment was to blind me and then slowly starve me to death. Hearing this, I had no choice. Under the cover of night, I waded across to Blefuscu, where I was received with hospitality. It was there I found a true boat. Overturned in the sea, likely from my own shipwreck, I repaired it, and with the help of the Blefuscudians, I set sail into the open ocean, eventually being rescued by an English merchant ship. I had returned to the world of men my own size, but my travels were far from over. My next voyage was not so fortunate in its beginning. Our ship was driven by a storm, and we found ourselves near an unknown land. I went ashore with a few others to find water. What we found was a land of giants. The grass was as tall as trees. My companions fled back to the boat, leaving me behind as a monstrous creature pursued them. I was soon discovered by a farm worker, a man some 60 feet in height. I was a curiosity, a plaything. Eventually, I was sold to the queen and brought to live at court. The king of this land, Brobdingnag, was a scholar and a thinker. He was fascinated by me, this tiny, perfectly formed creature. He would often call me to his chambers for conversations.
You are a most remarkable little creature. Tell me of your country. Tell me of your government, your laws, your culture.
Eager to impress him, I spent hours describing the glories of England. I spoke of the Parliament, our courts of justice, the management of our treasury. I detailed the history of our recent wars, our victories, and our political factions, the Whigs and the Tories. I tried to paint my homeland in the most favorable light possible. The king listened patiently, taking notes, asking clarifying questions. When I was finished, he sat in silence for a long time. Then he picked me up in his hand, stroked me gently, and spoke, his voice filled not with anger, but with profound pity.
My little friend Grildrig, you have made a most admirable speech. You have clearly proved that ignorance, idleness, and vice are the proper ingredients for qualifying as a legislator. That laws are best explained, interpreted, and applied by those whose interest and abilities lie in perverting them. I see among you a class of people bred up from their youth in the art of proving, by words multiplied for the purpose, that white is black and black is white according as they are paid.
I was stunned into silence.
From what you have told me, it does not appear that you require many virtues to rise to high office. And your history, what is it but a heap of conspiracies, murders, massacres, revolutions, and banishments? The effects of greed, faction, hypocrisy, cruelty, rage, madness, and ambition.
In an attempt to redeem myself and my country, I told him of a great invention. I told him of gunpowder. I described how he could take 100 cannons, blow up the walls of his strongest towns, and destroy his enemies. I expected him to be impressed by our power. Instead, he was horrified.
What a devilish machine. I am amazed how so impotent and groveling an insect as you could entertain such inhuman ideas. Never mention it again.
He then turned to me with a grave expression.
I cannot but conclude the bulk of your natives to be the most pernicious race of little odious vermin that nature ever suffered to crawl upon the surface of the earth.
His words stung me deeply, because I knew, in my heart, that he was right. My life among the giants ended as strangely as it began. An eagle snatched up the traveling box I lived in and dropped it into the sea, where I was once again rescued by a passing ship. But this time, I returned to England a changed man, my pride in my country and my species deeply shaken. My travels continued, each more strange than the last. On my third voyage, after my ship was taken by pirates, I was marooned on a small island. There, I saw it, a floating island in the sky, moving by the power of a great magnet. This was Laputa. The people there were utterly lost in thought. They were so consumed by mathematics and music that they were oblivious to the world around them. Their heads were tilted to one side, one eye turned inward, the other up to the sky. They required servants, called flappers, to gently tap them with a bladder on a stick, just to get their attention or remind them to speak. Their minds were in the stars, while their homes were in disrepair and their clothes ill-fitting. I then journeyed to the land below, Balnibarbi, which was ruled by the floating island. I visited their Grand Academy of Legado. It was a place of mad science. I saw a man who had been working for 8 years on a project to extract sunbeams from cucumbers. Another was attempting to turn human excrement back into the food it came from. Another, an architect, designed a method of building houses from the roof downwards. They were all projectors, pursuing abstract theories with no regard for practical results. The only sane man I met was Lord Munodi, whose lands were green and fertile because he used traditional, proven methods of farming. He was considered a dull, unimaginative man by his peers.
They despise me for my simple ways. They call my estate a sign of backward thinking. But look around you. Their fields are barren, their people starve, all in the name of progress that never arrives.
From there, I traveled to Glubdubdrib, the island of sorcerers, where I was able to summon the ghosts of the dead, and learned that history was full of lies. Then to Lugnag, where I met the Struldbrugs, mortals cursed with immortality. They did not enjoy eternal youth, but an eternity of old age, sickness, and despair. It was a horrifying sight. I had seen enough folly and misery, and I made my way back to England once more. I should have stayed home, but the sea called to me again, and I set out on my 4th and final voyage, this time as a captain. My crew mutinied, leaving me on the shore of yet another unknown land. There, I encountered 2 types of beings. The first were vile, brutish creatures, hairy and savage with the shape of humans. They were called yahoos. The second were horses, but these were not ordinary animals. They were the rational, intelligent rulers of the land. They were the Houyhnhnms. I was taken in by one of them, a master Houyhnhnm, and he became my tutor. The Houyhnhnms had no words for evil or falsehood. The closest they could come was the thing which is not. They lived by reason alone. Their society was one of friendship, benevolence, and perfect order. The master Houyhnhnm was baffled by me. I looked like a yahoo, but I possessed a glimmer of reason.
You speak of your homeland. Tell me of this place.
And so I did. But my perspective had changed. I told him of war and how we killed each other over religious squabbles or for a piece of land. I explained the concept of money and how it drove men to lie, cheat, steal, and betray. I spoke of lawyers, politicians, and doctors who profited from the arguments, follies, and diseases of others.
I do not understand. You have a small portion of reason, yet you use it only to aggravate your natural corruptions and acquire new ones. The yahoos here are odious enough, but they lack the capacity for the evils you describe. Your people seem to be yahoos, given a faculty that only serves to make them worse.
Over time, I came to adore the Houyhnhnms. I saw in them the perfection of nature, and in the yahoos, I saw the true nature of my own species. I looked at my own reflection in the water, and I was disgusted. I was a yahoo. I resolved to spend the rest of my days in this land of reason. But it was not to be. The General Assembly of the Houyhnhnms ruled that it was unnatural for a creature with the barest hint of reason to live among them while so closely resembling a yahoo. They feared I might incite the yahoos to rebellion. With great sorrow, my master informed me I had to leave.
Go. It is the will of the assembly. We will remember you.
I built a canoe and was forced back into the world of men. A Portuguese ship rescued me against my will. When I returned to England, I could not bear the sight of my own family. Their smell, their appearance, their every action reminded me of the yahoos. I could not stand their pride, their noise, their irrationality. I bought 2 horses and spent my days in the stable with them. They were the only beings whose company I could tolerate. I have written this account of my travels, not to entertain, but to enlighten, to show humanity a mirror of its own folly, its own corruption, its own savage nature. Whether they choose to see it is another matter entirely.
Next time on Tenny Presents Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. You've just journeyed through worlds that mock our own, where reason and folly wage a bitter war. But what happens when the next journey isn't a critique, but a descent into pure, nonsensical madness? Join us next time with Lewis Carroll as we follow a white rabbit down a hole where logic takes a holiday.